thewellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives. This is Up for a Chat with Cindy O'Meara, Carren Smith, and Kim Morrison.
Here we are, up for a chat about the hottest topics that are important to you, inspiring you to awaken the change within. I'm Carren Smith.
And I'm Cindy O'Meara.
And now, Kimmy's not on the show with us today. She's overseas right now with her family, so we're going to miss her desperately. But we have an amazing guest on the show. That Cindy, I am so grateful to you for partnering me in this conversation, because this is a conversation that's particularly close to my heart, and I have thought about it 100 times as to whether I was going to go public with this information. But today I've decided I'm going to, because I feel like there's probably a lot of benefit to everybody to be able to chronicle this journey for myself, but also too for our listeners to be able to introduce you guys to some of the experts that I'm personally drawing on. But of course, all of you guys would know when it comes to health and well-being, I don't make a move unless Cindy knows about it. And I just feel so incredibly blessed to know that I'm not on my own in this journey. And let me just get straight to it. We have the amazing Clint Paddison joining us on the show today. Now, Clint is an expert when it comes to rheumatoid arthritis, which I've just tested positive for. So we are super keen to have a conversation with this incredible man, listen to his story of his own personal journey, to also explore how he has healed himself and how he goes on to heal hundreds of thousands of people around the world now. And a more humble and a more genuine man I don't think I've met. So welcome to the show, Clint. It's an absolute treat to share the next hour with you. Thank you for doing this with us.
Thank you, Carren and Cindy. What a pleasure.
Definitely. So I'm going to ask the first question.
You go. Go, Cindy, go.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to know, Clint, I'd really like to go back to your life before you were diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and leading up to that diagnosis. But what was it like? Paint a picture for us, what your childhood was like and, you know, what was happening.
Well, as we'll sort of cover throughout this conversation, rheumatoid arthritis stems from a gut disorder. So I'm going to highlight some of the parts of my childhood and growing up to answer your question, but with some sort of emphasis on that aspect. Otherwise, I'd be just pulling any random information. So I was a natural birth, was breastfed for a long period of time. So I had, like, in terms of a good start with my upbringing. I grew up on a farm, so I was on a meat and veg diet most of my life. In fact, my dad used to say stuff like, eat your meat, it'll put hair on your chest and stuff. And so I was eating a lot of, farm foods. We were, eating foods from the farm, where sheep, cattle, pigs, which were the most unpleasant to prepare. The way that they had to be prepared is pretty disgusting. But, we were eating these sort of homegrown foods and, of course, some garden veggies that Mum would get. And I would be always a thin kid growing up as a teenager. So I'd try and drink lots of milk and try and get a lot of calories from your stereotypical kind of, standard Australian foods. And in terms of exercise, I was running cross country as a teenager. I was fit. I won the cross country when I was 17 and didn't have a record time or anything, but I, was the kind of lanky, long distance runner at school. So I had lots of friends. I was school captain. I was sports captain. Things were good at school. It was a very quiet little school out in Peak Hill, which is out past Dubbo in the middle of New South Wales. But I was a happy kid, grew up with an elder sister who's 1 year older than me, and we happy times out there on the farm, driving the tractor, sowing the wheat. Did well at school, then went to university, mucked around the first year of university and almost failed one subject and just passed all the rest, and panicked and thought, oh my God, this is so much harder than school and everyone's so much smarter than me. So then I became an ultra nerd, and I was doing laser physics as my education. And just because it sounded cool, when I was year 12, I had to choose something, and this thing said optoelectronics, which is all to do with optical fibers and light communication. So I thought, that sounds cool. So I was studying that, but it was very hard. So I had to apply as much effort as I could, but I ended up getting huge accolades at university after studying like crazy for the subsequent 3 years of the 4 years honours degree. I got a whole bunch of sort of awards and stuff, and this is kind of relevant to later in our conversation. So I guess the reason it's relevant is, I showed that I could basically undertake research, and I actually proved for the first time in the world that frequency doubled copper vapor lasers could simultaneously fabricate multiple fiber gratings. So that was my claim to fame in my honours year at university, and we published a journal paper. And so I was actually a published scientist at the age of 22 or something, which was super cool because no one else had achieved that in my colleagues at uni. And then just had a wonderful time after that, working in a high-tech industry and just eating like all my mates and exercising more and more infrequently. As I got towards my late 20s, I was just going to the gym here and there, but not doing any cardiovascular exercise. But the bit that I want to draw upon that I hadn't mentioned before, I mentioned when I got diagnosed, which was at 31, is that between the age of 16 and 21, I was on low dose of doxycycline for acne. I had very persistent acne as a teenager, and it really affected my self-esteem at 16. Even as a boy, you can be very self-conscious about the way you look and feeling like you can fit in. And so I went to the doctor and I got some doxycycline low dose, and I went on those tablets. And for reasons that I lament greatly, I didn't really kind of consider stopping them. I just thought, oh, well, that's what I do for my acne. And it wasn't until I turned 21, I thought, none of my friends have acne anymore at 21. Maybe I should stop taking these tablets. And it wasn't until then that I took the risk in my mind of stopping taking them. But I had digestive trouble throughout the rest of my 20s, and obviously it manifested into much worse things later on. So that's kind of the stuff leading up to when I got diagnosed, which was at 31 years old. And yes, it all began in my feet. So that's the pre-Clint, pre-rheumatoid Clint.
Yeah, interesting that it began in your feet. So was it when you walked? Did they ache?
Yes, I describe it as having the feeling of broken glass in the metatarsals or the padding at the front of your feet. Parts of your sort of body that you never think about. The thing with rheumatoid is you discover areas of your body that you'd previously given no thought because they've never hurt or they've just been they don't play a part in your life. Things like my chest bone, I get pain in my chest bone because the inflammation was in those connective joints between the ribs and the chest plate. And so, things like that, or my jaw where inflammation was getting into. So yeah, but it started in my feet. And for most people, it begins in the little joints, like the fingers, the wrists, ankles, and the feet. Things like that is where it tends to begin, because if you've got a little bit of inflammation, it tends to get activated in little joints. And as you get more and more inflammation, it can lodge in bigger and bigger joints. So that tends to be generally the trend.
Now, I'm just really surprised about the antibiotics, that your doctor didn't say something. It shouldn't have been up to you how long you took it for. I would have thought your doctor would have been a little bit more cluey than leaving you on it for that extended period of time. What happened there?
I don't remember. I just honestly don't remember. I cannot recall any conversations with doctors about the antibiotics. I really can't. I never took them seriously. I thought they were just a fairly mild intervention for the acne. And really, I draw a blank. I try and think back to where I even went to the doctors when I was in Sydney, and I cannot even recall where I was getting these refills. It's the strangest thing. But I've got a strange view on this, in that in parts of me feel that I was somehow destined to get this condition, and I draw upon a little bit of a not a heavy religious background, but certainly a feeling of something that's meant to be. And because of my really unusual set of skills, which was my scientific background, and then later, since then, I've actually been doing stand-up comedy for the past 18 years. This whole time I've been doing stand-up. So I've got public speaking skills. I was also, debating at school, and have always felt fairly confident in front of, in terms of speaking. And so I thought maybe because of this unique combination of things that, and my ability to solve problems, that this was sort of bestowed upon me as something that was kind of my cross to bear. And it helps to think of it like that, even if that's not the case. Let's just say that, what a bunch of baloney. But if I think of it like that, it helps me to not feel bitter about having a knee that's real clicky and grindy, and that I irritated getting up off the floor a few months ago, and I am having to rehabilitate almost all over again, just from the damage that's inside. It requires a lot of careful attention. And a couple of elbows where my forearms are rotated at the elbow that mean I get rotator cuff issues in my back. And I mean, I'm going to be dealing with the consequences of years of inflammation for the rest of my life. And so I still like to think of this as in a positive way. And what's great about this, I ask myself whenever I've got some big challenge, and what's great about this enormous problem that literally interrupted everything in my life, and put me in the darkest, blackest place, is that, well, I've been able to put together a plan that if 100 people follow, 99 people will see benefit, some of which a lot and some of which a little, but hey, that's a nice contribution to the world. And so I feel like, that's how I think of this now.
As I was listening to you regarding your life on the farm, did I hear that it was a wheat farm?
It was. We've got wheat and oats, yes, but Dad has stopped a lot of his farming activity. He's 70 now, Mum's 75. And so, yes, at the time we were growing wheat and oats.
And were there many chemicals being sprayed on the farm, or was your parents fairly organic?
No, I'm 43, so if we go back to when I was, say, 14, helping out mostly around the age of 10 to 15 on the farm, it was all, Monsanto Roundup, I remember clearly, because that stuff, it was so expensive, and every time Dad would buy it, he would curse Monsanto because of how expensive it is, because they have such a cornering of the market.
Oh, they did definitely back then, but now, we have 500 products with glyphosate in it, which is the active ingredient in Roundup. Yeah.
Right, yes.
So they don't have the corner of the market anymore, but it just means more and more people around Australia are spraying it. So he used Roundup pre-seeding?
Roundup at the point where there are small seedlings coming up out of the soil. I think at that point is when the spray was applied, because we had to drive carefully so as not to trample or to crush too much of the small seedlings coming out of the ground, I remember.
Interesting. Because I don't know if you know this, but Roundup is patented in 2010 as an antibiotic. So not only were you exposed to the antibiotics that you were taking, you may have been exposed to Roundup as an antibiotic, which was probably having a detrimental effect on your gut and on your gut and microbiome. So you had a double whammy there, I think, Clint.
Yeah, and that's something that is something I hadn't given much thought to in the past. But you're right, I was helping out with the spraying. It wasn't a large part of what we did on the farm. We did a lot less than other people because my parents have always been, trying to find the pennies to pay the bills, and so the cost of the insecticides is so great that we did it at the very least of what we absolutely had to.
Yeah. So, coming up to the diagnosis, what happened?
Well, there was a perfect storm of immense stress, emotional turmoil, and a lot of inactivity. Not exercising, but also just sort of 10 years of post antibiotics without really trying to restore my microbiome. So I ate fairly repetitive sort of foods without really trying to replenish those lost bacteria. So if you take antibiotics for every day for 5 years, I mean, you're not going to have much of anything left inside, not just good guys, but anything. I mean, it's all basically a wasteland. And so then if I'm just eating, cooked foods only, never had salad, and I mean never ever. So never any leafy greens, which are favorite foods of healthy bacteria. And again, just all cooked food. So just depleting all my enzyme resources. No fresh fruits or not a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. And yet I thought I was eating healthy. I thought, look, this is normal. Go to the local RSL and just get like a $7 evening meal because I was, single guy and didn't cook too much. And then meanwhile, just not exercising in a way that I could, create a sweat and to build up some kind of detoxification. Just going to the gym and trying to always maintain my weight with a light frame, just the way that I've been, built. And then I was running a business, and so this business that I was running was struggling, and I was very, very stressed. And the word hate continually came out of my mouth, and it actually popped straight in my mind again with that business. I hated the business and felt tied to it, and that hate feeling was probably circulating in me more than I had ever had in my life, just because I wanted out of that business. So there was all these things going on, and a relationship that was failing as well. That was a long distance relationship, and all these things were happening when I woke up with the pain.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's almost like we create these incredibly toxic environments inside of ourselves over time, and it's almost inevitable that something will show itself. Do you think?
I think that given the statistics of the amount of people who take prescription medications, particularly the elderly, as we develop more and more problems throughout our life, that if we just live a conventional Western lifestyle, not just with the foods, but if we get up, we go to work every day, we don't get much time with the kids, we don't get enough sleep, we're on the mobile phones all the time, constantly bad posture over our computers, we don't exercise, we're always sitting down. If we just live a normal life that we're all considered to be conventional, things are going to go wrong. It's just not good enough. It's just a one-way street to problems. So we have to really work hard to be unconventional and creative and proactive about our lifestyles to avoid what is otherwise going to create something in our lives. That's how I view the Western life. It's just too much of all those things I mentioned to be safe.
I have to tell you this, yesterday I was walking past Hungry Jack's. So it's 35, 37 degrees up here at the moment. Everybody was in their cars. I would have said there were 30 cars waiting to get through 2 lines of Hungry Jack's to not get out of the car and eat that stuff. Clint, I despair. I'm listening to you and I agree with you entirely, but I despair because I just don't know if people are going to wake up before it's too late. And they have a disease, or they have a child that's not as healthy as they should be. Are you finding this as well? Do you despair just a little bit?
Oh, look, I can take us down a big despair direction. I don't talk about this too much because we'll lose our audience, right? Yeah. We don't want to go down and go unhappy. But my personal view is that is that on the flip side, if we paint nice pictures in our minds, if we think about before the sort of industrial revolution, and I don't really know what that looks like because I don't study history much, but I believe that if we picture a situation where we're walking a lot every day, we're not sitting down much only to eat or only to rest or something, or just to interrupt what is otherwise an active lifestyle, and we eat only enough to satisfy our hunger and no more, and we don't have electronics too much at night and we get a lot of sleep, then as simple as that sounds, then we're probably going to go really, really good. And so, there's quite a massive difference between that scenario and the one I mentioned earlier, both in the behavior but also the outcome. Overeating is probably one of the biggest problems. If we only ate enough energy, only took in enough energy to sustain us, and occasionally, God forbid, even actually didn't quite eat enough in one day, so we actually were a little hungry for a while, we'd all live longer. We know that all the animal studies, every study that's ever been done on underfeeding animals, they all live longer. So the opposite is, it has to be detrimental.
That's really interesting that you say that, because when I look at everything that my life has contained and included, there's a couple of like real alarms in there for me that, like I can see where there might have been some things go wrong in terms of what's led up to this diagnosis. How old were you? What went through your mind? What did your family think? Tell me about the moment that you found out that the pain in your feet was rheumatoid arthritis, because that's when mine started.
Yeah. Well, it started in my feet, and I didn't think much of it other than it was unusual. It was something I'd never felt before, and therefore I was curious, very curious about it, slightly alarmed, but mostly curious. Also with a feeling of it'll be right, because throughout my entire life I've had this attitude of everything always works out for me. It's an affirmation that I never wrote down and decided that I would have for myself. It's something that has evolved through observation in my life. For some reason, I have had this experience that has had ongoing experiences that have created that affirmation. I always things always work out for me. It's like an observation of events and so I now believe it. And so I thought, it'll be fine. Things always work out. And then but I had my blood test. My fingers started to puff up. And the general practitioner was very serious when he told me, he's like, you've got rheumatoid arthritis. And I hadn't heard of it before. I didn't know anyone with it. And I was, as I said, cross-country champion. And I probably overlooked the sort of most recent 7 or 8 years leading up to diagnosis, and thought back to when I was, running around and doing the city to surf and stuff. And so I kind of ignored the recent, more inactive period and thought I'm a healthy person and I eat well again under the ways that I used to think was fine. And so my first thing was, it's not that bad. It's just not that bad. And when I even saw the rheumatologist, he started talking about all these medications, and I just said, look, let me try natural methods first. I thought everyone in the whole world must be missing something. Everyone's got to be missing something. This is what I thought. And that's what began a very, very long, painstaking and mostly frustrating period of years of experimentation and dietary and exercise intervention and supplementation interventions. And that's what I thought. Can't be that bad. Everyone else must be missing something. Everything will work out for me. But what I didn't realize is the enormity of the beast that I was up against. I had no idea that it was David versus Goliath on steroids.
And so where did you go? I mean, there's a lot of people who are now referring to you in terms of their help. Where did you go back then?
There were 2 people who'd published books on Amazon. One's called Sonia St. Clair, actually a Gold Coast girl, and she'd written a book called Freedom from Rheumatoid Arthritis, and I ordered it on Amazon, and I was so keen. I inadvertently ordered 2 copies, and I still have 2 copies of that book I guess I was just a little bit so keen to get it, and followed her program. And also there is a woman who is a coach for rheumatoid arthritis, and her name is Barbara Allen, and she has a book called Conquering Arthritis. She was diagnosed with, I think it was reactive arthritis, which is a different set of circumstances. So without going into all the detail, one could argue that it's not the same, and clinically it is not the same, but a lot of her concepts in her book I found to be overlapping with my thoughts and also my experiences with pain. And so this is who I followed. I couldn't get hold of Sonia, although she has since reached out to me years later after finding out that I'd been looking for her. But I did get hold of Barbara Allen, and I did Skype consultations with her for some time. Until then, I just went on my own way. But neither of these approaches got me to get the breakthroughs that I had later experienced. But I'm very grateful to both of them because, without those 2 books that were on Amazon, there was nothing else, absolutely nothing.
Yeah. I can imagine that would have been very disconcerting, like to have that diagnosis, to experience the pain of it, and then to have so few people that you could draw on in terms of where you could get support that wasn't necessarily just straight down the medical model. So did you land up getting caught up in the medications, and because methotrexate I think is the one that's certainly the one that's been suggested for me. Yes.
So I know that only a very small portion of your audience would be familiar with rheumatoid or want all the details of this, and you and I can chat offline if you like, but let me just give you some insights into the medications, and certainly the one that I took was methotrexate. So I tried 12 months to stay off the meds, but without knowing enough at that point about how to go about that, I had no chance at all, and my body deteriorated dramatically in the 12 months from diagnosis until I went on methotrexate, further accelerated by taking ibuprofen for 3 weeks in relatively high dose, trying to get rid of pain, which took my daily pain levels from about a 4 out of 10 to about a 7 out of 10, at which they remained. Wow. And did not come back down again. So ibuprofen just caused more gut leakiness, and I was stuck then at this high level, and that's when the first time I felt dramatic fear. I woke up, my whole body was on fire, was bent over, crippled, sort of getting out of bed, and I realized, oh my God, I can't take the painkillers because this somehow is now worse after taking them, and now I have nothing. And so that's when it really, really scared me. And it was still 6 months after that of battling before I took the methotrexate. I started on 10 milligram, which is an introductory dose, and then 25 milligram is where I ended up, which is maximum tablet dose. From there, you can go into an injection form where you can go up a little bit higher in dosages, but I was at the maximum for methotrexate on that drug. And then just to sort of round out the struggling part of my story, I then was told by the rheumatologist that I would have to increase my medications, and it was obviously coming because I was just still debilitated. Could barely walk, so I was doing Bikram yoga every single day just so that I could get enough movement through my knees so that I could get out of bed and walk the next day. And the doctor said, "Look, we're going to have to add some meds," but we would have still had to keep the methotrexate, which meant I would never be able to start a family. And so everything was just so bleak. And at that point is when I just remember thinking, and this is a real thing actually that's strange, that there's a little bit of an insight, and when I've told this story before, I've not actually shared this, but one of the things that I was really concerned about making big dietary changes and doing some things that I've read about, like Gerson theory, where you go pure raw vegan, lots of wheat grassing and green juices. And one of the reasons I didn't want to try like cancer therapy like that, which I felt might have some merit, I just didn't want to lose weight. I was so concerned about this. It's almost like it sort of had a disproportionate amount of importance, especially as a guy. We just have this feeling like, we get painted this picture in our mind that we need to be muscular and strong. And of course, that's a good thing. But I was so concerned. But at that moment, I just said, look, I don't care. In the meeting, he said more drugs. And I'm thinking that means no kids, more side effects, of which methotrexate has many already. I'm like, this is it. I'm all done. I'm going to do anything. I'm going to do absolutely anything. Like, I'll water fast. I'll do anything. I don't care about my weight anymore. Just get me out of this living nightmare. And it was with that decision that then it opened up the door to try some new, more dramatically, more intervention that was hardcore, but started to get results finally. And it was holding me back, that one thing. And there's a lesson in that for all of us, even if it's nothing to do with health. It's just sometimes there's just one thought that's just there that holds you back from making massive decision.
So what did you actually do for yourself? Tell us about your journey through to recovery.
Well, I started with things like I said, like the wheat grassing. I started shifting to more plant foods. I wanted to get as many enzymes into me as possible. Okay? I went through this phase of like, it's all about the enzymes. And whilst I believe that's one aspect of it, at the time I thought that was the aspect of it. Now I believe that there's 6 moving parts that we need to address, which are bacteria, leaky gut, stomach acid levels, and we've got to get increase our stomach acid in the gut, and we need to lower acidosis in the body. We need to restore our mucosal lining, the mucus along the inside of the colon, and enzymes. And you put all those together. The first letter of each one of those all spell the acronym BLAME with 2 A's, so BLAAME. And so anyway, but I was all down on the enzymes at the time. So I was, all about, fresh fruits and vegetables and stuff. And I felt pain relief, and that was encouraging. But it was when I had food poisoning. I was eating a bunch of unwashed cherries that had been imported, and I hadn't washed my hands. I was on a road trip, and I got massive food poisoning, and all my pain went away after purging from both ends. And so I thought, this is unbelievable. I just need to get food poisoning all the time. Yeah. But in practice, what this meant was that when I was fasting, I felt no pain. And I found then some studies on this online as well from just the PubMed records. And sure enough, all people with rheumatoid arthritis, when they stop eating, the pain goes away. I was like, this is phenomenal. And so when I experienced that, and then I reproduced that, okay, so sort of scientific approach, I'm like, is it reproducible? So I went and I did it again. Sure enough, exactly the same result. And then I looked at the studies, same with everyone else. And so I was convinced. I mean, there's no way of looking at the situation and not coming to the conclusion that rheumatoid arthritis has something to do with the digestive system if you don't eat and the pain goes away. I mean, there's no way you can look at that and argue that it's unrelated, right? And so when I had that as a fact, I decided that it has to be the gut, and I have to be able to work out what to eat without causing pain. And that was such a hard question to answer, as to what to eat without pain, because everything that had any degree of calories caused pain. So away I went. I did a raw vegan diet for 8 months, and that got rid of a large portion of the pain, but still in pain. And then I was looking forward to eating some cooked foods, just because I found the raw vegan hard, and I dropped so much weight. And in addition, the Bikram yoga uses up about 1,000 calories a class, and so I was really struggling to maintain my weight. And then I started on some simple cooked foods, like some some buckwheat and quinoa, and later some brown rice and sweet potatoes and things like this, and transitioned to sort of a 50-50 situation where I was eating some cooked foods and some raw foods, and slowly started to taper the methotrexate, and over a period of about 3 years was then off the methotrexate entirely. So,
Wow.
I mean, this was a very long process. So people say, how quickly can I heal? And I say, well, there's two ways to heal: the very, 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 very slow way, and the very, very slow way. Right? So,
I like that.
yeah.
Slow way or slow way. And your commitment is phenomenal. People give up too quickly and they want the one pill wonder, and that's why they'll go for probably the methotrexate and any other medications that are given to them. But you have incredible commitment.
I made it my mission, partly because of the pain I was in, but partly because, in a weird way, there's a couple other ways. In a weird way, this was like the greatest science experiment I could have ever asked for. I mean, the complexity of it is unbelievable. And I still only understand a fraction of it because it's all on the inside. We can't look at what's going on. We can't even see the bacteria. In fact, an intervention from a gastroenterologist just to go and test out what's going on and measure things causes problems in a way that I wouldn't want to have that done, because, you know, if a lot of the bacteria that's helpful inside our colon is anaerobic. So you don't want oxygen to, you don't want to expose that area to oxygen. You just don't want the sort of interventions. I believe drugs are required before those procedures. And so, you know, the whole thing's a mystery. And now with the introduction of these microbiome sampling that is done by companies like uBiome, and there's a couple in Australia, it's kind of cool because now you can look at your bacteria portfolio and make adjustments accordingly, which is something that's only in the last couple of years. And so, although I think you can do it without that, that at least gives you some insight as to what's going on. But otherwise, I mean, this is a black box. This is a very, very complicated, mysterious thing that we're trying to battle. And our feedback mechanism is the pain in the joints. And so, in this weird twist, you kind of want the pain to be there a little bit, at least a little bit, so that you can find out if what you're doing is working or not, because it's an alarm signal.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of, so I'll share with our listeners what's kind of transpired for me. About 2 years ago, we did Machu Picchu, and we came back from Machu Picchu, and it was almost overnight. Like, it wasn't a gradual thing. And I'd be so interested in your feedback on this, Clint. It was almost overnight I started to develop pain in the metatarsals of my feet, and I'm a runner, and I 4-foot strike. So I was finding that my running became so painful, but I just kept running through the pain. And after about a year, it became intolerable. So I went and saw a podiatrist. Nothing significant ever occurred to me because I just feel like I'm so healthy. And I went to see the podiatrist, and they said, yes, there's nothing wrong with your feet. It's just the way that your toes are striking. So we need to give you orthotics. So I spent $860 on the orthotics. And then I got some x-rays done on my feet, and they said, yes, no, there's no damage to the bones, but we can see inflammation between each of the bones there. So it's just the way that they call it toe off. So it's just the way that we can see that your toes are working when you land and you walk. So I used the orthotics. They didn't help me one little bit. And then so I've been kind of just working with that over the last couple of years, and I've gone from being able to wear beautiful high heel shoes to having to wear Birkenstocks. So it's like, oh my God, my whole life has changed, because for me, the stiletto, it's my world. and the girls know because we're all professional speakers. So when we're on stage, you know, I'm the one that'll be on stage for 4 days, rocking the stilettos for the 4 days because I'm so well trained in it. And I can't even wear them for like a half an hour anymore. And then I started to feel about a year ago pain in my back that's got more and more debilitating, and it's when I'm lying down. And I do have a significant back injury from being in the Bali bombing, but I was also in an accident when I was 18 that compressed my spine, and there's been a lot of deterioration in the spine since then. So I just thought it was that. I thought, I'm just getting older. My goodness gracious, the bones are starting to, obviously, I don't know, something's going wrong. And I found about 6 weeks ago, I started getting sick all the time. Like I would wake up in the middle of the night and I'd be vomiting. And then the next day I'd be sick again, and then I'd be sick for a couple of days, and the migraines have just been horrendous. And so I went to the doctor and I said, something's got to give. And they did all of the blood tests, and there is something going on hormonally for me that's kind of not quite explainable yet. So I've still got a few more tests to do. But what showed up was the positive test for the rheumatoid arthritis. And so the doctor started taking me through, because he was a bit of a specialist in that area. And he started taking me through what they tested for, and I needed to get another test, which I did. And that explains the inflammation, and it explains the pain. And, of course, my joints in my hands hurt. My fingers ache. It's not debilitating. Like my feet, I'd say, is like a 6 or a 7 out of 10, but my hands are like a 4, and I can live with it. And my back is maybe an 8 out of 10, and I'm living with that. So I don't take any medication. I don't take any painkillers. I don't do anything. I just, I just try and manage it with stretching and moving and trying not to sit down too much anymore. Whereas I think I've sat down for long periods of time. Like if I'm building websites or I'm writing programs or I'm writing a book, I'll be sitting for 10 hours at a time. And I just, I started to do some research since I got the diagnosis, and I'm someone who adjusts pretty quickly. So the first couple of days I was a bit down, but then I realized, I thought, well, you know what? If anybody's capable of healing this and creating a miracle for myself, it has to be me. After everything that I've been through with my partner committing suicide and me going through the bombing, it has to be me. I've got the mental furniture and the emotional furniture to do it, which is why I found you, or how I found you. I put a post up on Facebook, and a mutual friend of ours, Rowena Jane, put me onto you. And it was when I started reading all of your information, I thought it made me see that actually this is something I can get on top of. I just have to pay a bit of extra attention to what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. But it's not something I'm willing to surrender to. It's something that I have to work with and love my body through and love myself through. So I'm trying really hard not hard, but I'm really making sure, that's probably a better way to put it, I'm really making sure that I'm addressing it holistically in terms of what is the spiritual message in this, what's the emotional message in this, and how have I done this to myself so that then I can undo it. And with everything that you're talking about, like all the sort of the warning signs, I can see so much in my own history and in my own past that could be little red flags that could say, yep, that would have contributed, that would have contributed, that would have contributed, and that would have contributed. For somebody who, for any of our listeners, most of our listeners are pretty health conscious. I'm sure they know someone who knows someone who's been through this. For somebody who is listening to the show, and also for me, what would you suggest would be the first step in terms of what you offer and how you offer to help people? What would you suggest would be the first step for all of us so that we can kind of figure out what our baseline is?
Well, the very first one you've already achieved, which is very touching, how you're able to speak so openly about your situation and acknowledge it. And, the way you so articulate your, situation is, I can really see, your professional speaking coming through there. It's amazing. So first of all, it's just being able to say something I've done has contributed to this.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm a victim. I don't deserve this. That's not right. That's not the situation either. It just is. It's just a cause and a reaction. Right. So there's an action and here's a reaction. Let's take all of the sort of karmic view on this and all of the kind of victim view. Let's let go of all of those things. Something has physically happened that has meant that there's been a shift to your microbiome and allowing more of those pathogenic bacteria, which we all have, into our bloodstream, and your body's reacted to it. That's all that's going on here. All right.
Yeah.
So we just take a deep breath and say, there's a physical thing that's happened. It's got nothing to do with who I am as a person or what I deserved, or I'm not a victim or anything like that. So it's so refreshing to hear you speak so almost beautifully about this situation. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's the first thing. Now, I'm going to try and touch upon as many of the little mental notes that I made whilst you were speaking to offer just some commentary against some of the things that jumped out at me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I'll probably be able to recall half the things I wanted to say, but I'm not making notes, but I just wanted to try and touch upon those. And I think that will also help listeners if they're thinking about making these changes as well, because some of them are common. First of all, with the blood tests, you mentioned the doctor ran blood tests. I'm not going to have you answer these questions, but just to make a note yourself to review. First of all, make sure that he tested rheumatoid factor, anti-CCP antibodies. Now, those two are nowhere near as important as to the actual impact of rheumatoid on your life as what is the C-reactive protein and the SED rate. So if your C-reactive protein is quite elevated and your SED rate or ESR is quite elevated, then that tells me more concerning things than what it does if you've just got a elevated rheumatoid factor and anti-CCP antibodies. Mm-hmm. Now, you got diagnosed you felt the feet pain 2 years ago as you were running and your foot striking, which through my experience reading books like Born to Run, which are just like my favorite book ever.
Yes, same.
Right, is absolutely the correct style of running and is a very anti-injury kind of approach that I applaud. But you're absolutely right that it causes that slap pain into those metatarsals and does create this issue. So with that, I can understand the challenge with the running. And if it were only that, then again, I wouldn't be concerned. Like those rheumatoid factor anti-CCP antibodies, I wouldn't be concerned. But the concern is that it's moved into your fingers. However, it's taken 2 years to move into your fingers. So your situation, as far as I can read from picking up from what you're saying, it's slow moving. And being on such a high quality nutrient dense diet that you've been on for the past sort of 7 years, and then prior to a little deviation again through your early 20s, has dramatically slowed the impact of otherwise how quickly this could progress, because taking 2 years to move from feet to fingers is unheard of. Absolutely freakishly unheard of. I mean, mine went from feet to fingers in 3 weeks. Okay?
Seriously?
Yes. So you are demonstrating absolutely extraordinarily resistance to the progression.
I could sob.
Right? Okay.
Me too.
Oh, I could sob.
All right. So give yourself a pat on the back, because I have never heard of it so slow.
Wow.
All right. So all the things that you do, the way you speak, which is the first time we've spoken, I have not listened to earlier episodes. The way that you speak, you've got such there's no friction between who you are and the way you express yourself. There's just this existence that you have that is free of turmoil, and this all just helps to have a healthy existence. And so that emotional side is obviously well under control, and your physical side through your exercise and through your diet is also excellent. And so this is really, really working in your favor. Now, what can we do in addition to that? What can we also do to see whether or not we can actually suppress? And before I get to that, which obviously we're going to be interested in, very, very often, back and shoulder issues are unrelated to rheumatoid.
Right.
So what we could have here is just simple posture-related, inactivity-related, lack of back bends related back pain, okay? Especially if it's lower back. And I'm not talking the sacroiliac joints. I'm just talking about like just that lower back right in the middle of your spine, from seating down too much, long car rides, that kind of stuff. If you've got that stuff, that's highly resolvable, or at least really, really reducible. Okay, if it's upper back pain between your shoulder blades, neck and stuff, that's very, very, very common as well. Again, posture-related, underuse of your rhomboid muscles and overuse of chest muscles if you go to the gym and do some physical workouts and stuff. So the back doesn't worry me that much, even though it's 8 out of 10, because it is the most commonly misassociated with rheumatoid.
Right.
Other listeners might be really tuned into this topic and think, well, perhaps it's ankylosing spondylitis, okay, which is a different autoimmune disease, which can often coexist with rheumatoid, because I just think they're basically different targets of the same condition, right? The diagnosis only exists because it's in the spine instead of a different joint. But the joints in the spine are just like another joint. But you just don't see rheumatoid in the spine very much.
Right.
So if I was to put money, right, and take a bet, I would put money that you don't have any inflammation in your spine that is the same source of inflammation as that in your feet and your fingers. Now, I could lose that bet because I don't know enough, and you haven't done maybe spinal scans and stuff.
Well, no, what they've come back with is osteoarthritis in my mid-back and my neck.
Okay, all of that
stuff. My spine is in great shape. But
okay. Well, that stuff with the right set of exercises that you should do daily can be dramatically reduced in terms of its impact on your life. So this is all good stuff, because nothing is bad as the rheumatoid. So we want to eliminate anything that we're misassociating as that bad, because it just helps us sort of just clear the desk of of little bills as opposed to worrying about the big bills. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And to know what we're actually dealing with.
Yeah. So, so the best way to address that would be a Bikram yoga class, which is the yoga style, and it's the only yoga style that I recommend for these situations. So even if it's worth, next time you're traveling to a business event, you're hosting a conference or whatever, just if they have a Bikram yoga nearby, or if they're even better, is one near where you live, just go and do half a dozen classes over 2 weeks and just witness firsthand the relief that you get through your spine by doing this. It's absolutely ridiculous. So that's the tip for the back. Now, with regards to a couple other things that you mentioned, this is I'm starting to lose my thoughts on what a couple of other things were. Oh, yes. And it's what to do in addition to what you're already doing. So we need to reduce fat intake, and that includes plant fats just for the time being. So if you're a heavy snacker on nuts and seeds, trail mixes and stuff, or if you love putting flax seeds into your coffee grinder, which then go into your smoothies, or if you love putting avocado on your toast, just for a couple of weeks, experiment with reducing your fat intake. That doesn't mean zero fat, because obviously we need fats. Fats are essential, but we can get by on such a less amount of these fats than what we actually like to eat. We love fats. Humans gravitate towards fats instinctively because it's the most dense form of energy. And when we used to have trouble finding foods, obviously you want to eat foods that are calorie dense because we don't have to eat as much to satisfy ourselves and to live the next day. So it's natural to want to eat fats. It's just that these days, and especially if you've got an autoimmune condition, we can choose to eat as few or as much of it as we want. So without needing to know all of your dietary habits, that's a guideline. And the number one most influential fat in terms of creating inflammation are going to be pure fats, where there's nothing but fat, and that, of course, is oils. So if something is a pure fat, such as, sunflower oil or avocado oil and even coconut oil, let's just set aside whether or not that's a healthy oil or not. Let's just set that argument aside. I just want to say that fat aggravates leaky gut when it exists, and so we just need to minimize it. And pure fat, which is oil, all needs to be set aside whilst we're dealing with this situation.
Gotcha. What about sugars? I have to say that's probably my weakness. For me, it's probably not too much of an issue. I don't fancy nuts at all. And I'm flat out having a tablespoon of olive oil in my food maybe once a week. So fats are not really an issue for me, but I'm a sugar fiend.
Okay, well, so this is now where we get into where we get away from kind of generic advice and we get into kind of more specific situations. So, for instance, you might find that by withholding sugar for a week, which would include fructose, so you might have to avoid fruits for a week, you might feel a difference, whereas someone else might have a different set of bacteria that are aggravating their inflammation, and therefore withholding the sugar source that feeds the bacteria doesn't have any impact, because ultimately it all comes down to the influence on bacteria. So we all have these different microbiomes, and so it depends on what they eat regularly, and what, if we hold it back, is going to cause them to die off and to allow the healthier guys to proliferate. And so this is why I created my program, is because in the first 12 days of my program, there is no sugar, there is no gluten. We have to avoid all the fats, and so the only fats that we get are through small amounts of essential fatty acids, through some buckwheat, quinoa, amaranth, and through a ton of leafy greens, which have a dramatic ratio of omega-3 and 6s, so that we can get a ton of 3s and virtually no 6s, which means that we can still meet our essential fatty acid requirements. And so we avoid all of these aggravators, nightshade vegetables as well, even though they're an iffy one. And we just avoid all of this stuff. And then we load on top of that all the leafy greens and potassium-rich foods. And we go avoid everything that everyone possibly could have a problem with. And then we load it with all the things that are wonderful for our gut. And then after 12 days, we then start testing foods back in. And the first food that we test back in that's recommended for everyone is papaya. So it's a fruit, and it's rich in papain, a digestive enzyme that helps break down proteins. Because although I know we've been chatting for a long time already, but we haven't gotten into all of the specifics, and we probably won't, of what's going wrong, other than the BLAME acronym I mentioned before. But ultimately, we've got proteins. It's the proteins in our foods and in the lining of the bacterial walls that are irritating our immune system. So ultimately, food sensitivities, and so it all comes down to proteins. And so if we can help digest those proteins using enzymes that are natural in food and that taste delicious, that we want to eat all the time, that's a good thing. So, fruits aren't far away. So after 12 days of our program, you're then back into fruits again, and also rock melon or cantaloupe for your US listeners, very rich in potassium. And there's a scientific study that shows the more potassium that people with rheumatoid arthritis took, the more pain relief they got. It's remarkable. Okay, so we have this diminished potassium resources partially influenced by everyone who's taken prednisone, which depletes potassium, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole bunch of science behind it, a whole bunch of my personal experience, and thousands of people who've been through this process who've enabled me with their feedback to make tweaks and adjustments. And certainly it's a evergreen project that I always tinker with to keep improving.
Clint, do you advocate organic, or are you just wanting to get the leafy greens into people, or yeah?
Organic's ideal, absolutely ideal. There was a study done on the effects of, and I may be stretching a branch here too far because I might not remember all of the details. But my view on this is that you're better off eating the leafy greens than avoiding them because they're not organic. But ideally, get them organic.
Yeah. I'm just eating my leafy greens now. If I smiled right now, I'd have a green tea.
There was a study that was done by, that was reported by nutritionfacts.org, and it was about cancer, and it was about a concern that eating a certain otherwise healthy food could cause cancer. And I forget the details of this, but ultimately what was found was that, by avoiding the healthy food because it can cause cancer in like a small number of people, meant that tons of people died of other unhealthy causes. And those people that ate the healthy food, only like a couple died of cancer. So ultimately, you're better off. Gee, that was a terrible example, but you're better off. You're better off eating the healthy food than avoiding it because you're worried that it may have some pesticides on it. Now, I know that pesticides matter, but I feel that it's a kind of a hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Do you think there are more ways to skin a cat? Because I'm in the nutrition world. I watch a lot of people and what they advocate for autoimmune diseases. So Dr. Terry Walls, Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride, yourself, Mark Hyman. I can go across the board, and it seems the common factor is real food and a lifestyle change, a complete lifestyle change. So, watching your stress levels, starting to move, doing the right types of things, having a bit of sunshine. So do you think that, like I listen to you and I look at Natasha Campbell-McBride and they're total opposites, but they both do the same, they both are trying to heal the gut, and we're both trying to, get that autoimmune disease to go away. What are your views on that?
Natasha Campbell-McBride, I know that she has more of a paleo or meat-heavy approach. And Terry Wiles, I know, with a famous MS history, has done tremendously well with her situation. Now, Terry Wiles, I've heard say that it all comes down to the plants. Okay, so Terry advocates essentially a plant-based diet, plus you can have some meat. Right, when she goes and helps recovering veterans from the US Army and gets them on programs that improves their health, she doesn't say with her fist banging on the table, eat meat, eat meat, eat meat. What she says is, eat plants, eat plants, eat plants. Okay, that's what she says. And she allows meat. I think that Terry and the way that she helps other people who improve despite of the meat. Not because of, but because there's so many plants involved that people can get well in spite of it. Because the studies are absolutely crystal clear that fat increases leaky gut. Okay, so can you have a situation where you eat enough plants to therefore negate the effects of the meat? I believe that a lot of people can. but I believe a lot of people can't. And people come to me from all of these people that you've mentioned and say, I've been doing X, I've been doing Y, and I've been doing Z for the last 12 months, and I continue to worsen. There have also been bloggers who follow the same kind of approach that some of the above people who've been mentioned. And they have blogged about autoimmune protocol for years and are now on triple therapy drugs, right? So this is not a game of like, oh, who's the, I know you're not even suggesting this, but some people can get caught up in it. It's that diet versus that diet, or it's this person versus this person. And I'm like, screw that. What we've got here are real people's lives. And I'm going to tell you, based on the people's feedback that I work with, I've got 550 people that I have in a community, and we communicate constantly every day, not with every individual, but over a period of a year, I'll speak to almost every one of those people. And our interaction is extraordinary with the information that exchanges. And so many of them have tried these other things that we've talked about. And ultimately, it has to come back to plant foods. The more plants you eat, the healthier you get. And so do we also need to eat meat? Well, the studies are clear that we don't. Do we benefit from eating meat? You can get all the vitamins and minerals and nutrients that you need without having to eat meat. Okay, so the question is, well, why would you? Well, because we enjoy it. We enjoy it, and we look to avenues which enable us to eat foods that we enjoy. And as long as we can acknowledge that, I think that's fine. But do we need it? No. Do we like it? Yes. Okay, so fine. If, for instance, any of the people that Dr. Hyman or Natasha Campbell McBride or Terry Walls has helped had to come and done a plant-based diet through the elimination process that I recommended, would have got the same results, my view, or if not, sustain them better. Because that's just, and here's a point I really want to make. This is where it gets really, really sneaky. You see these testimonials online from people who have followed those approaches. And what isn't obvious to the reader, and what takes a great discerning mind to understand, is that within 6 months, that person could be bad again. And that's where this is dangerous to the casual observer. It's not how someone is on the day that they feel better because they've used to eat McDonald's and they've done AIP or our autoimmune protocol for 3 months, and now they feel so much better they can write a testimonial. It's how they are in 3 years from then. And let me tell you, you're going to get a different answer than what you see after those first 3 months.
Yeah, for me, I think there's more ways to skin a cat than one. And I am very much in the belief that we are individuals, and what works for one doesn't work for another, and what works for another doesn't work for, I've seen this, over and over and over again. And I got to tell you, Clint, I've been a nutritionist for 40 years nearly. And it used to be, we just had to feed them real food. Just get out of the breakfast cereals, out of the margarine, out of the low fat, and, out of that type of thing, and just give them real foods. It didn't, as long as it was, plants with fruits and vegetables and grains. Even grains were never a problem. Even wheat wasn't a problem, We used to be able to do that and get people well. Now we can't. I'm even finding people struggle with lettuce. And I started to question, why are people struggling with lettuce? Not everybody, but people that have really got some really bad issues with their gut. And I started to look into it, and I found that they're now sterilising our lettuce in the supermarket. I'm not talking about when we go to our farmers markets and we buy straight from our farmers, or we produce our own. They're not the ones that are sterilising the lettuce, but the ones we're finding in the grocery store, which means you're taking the microbes off the lettuce, the soil-based microbes off the lettuce, which then in turn doesn't allow you to digest it, and it'll give you more and more microbes. So I just believe that we are in crisis, and we're seeing that as a result of the increase in autoimmune diseases. And as you said, whether it's ankylosing spondylosis or whether it's rheumatoid arthritis or osteoarthritis, they all stem from a gut that is not working. And I believe that if we can get to the root cause of that and get that gut working again, no matter what we do, and as long as it's something like you worked for 3 years to get to where you are. And that just shows you can't do any protocol for 3 months and expect it to cure you when you've spent a lifetime of not doing well. Yeah, I see this all the time, and I look at all of the programs and all of them work in some way or another. And my belief is that we are in crisis, and there are we as individuals are very different. That's just my 2 cents worth.
Well, we are absolutely very different, and I think that that it just goes to show, with the examples you cited earlier of all the programs and so many different ways to go about it. And I think ultimately it comes down to the individual, which I'm sure we can all agree with, and people can choose whatever they want. People can follow my stuff by listening to my podcast. They don't need to spend a cent. I've got all the information that I've ever created. I've at some point in time put on a podcast, and so if people want to listen to my views on this, they can listen to that. Or if people want to try something else instead or first, there's lots of opportunities. Certainly more than what there were when I kicked off with my problems many years ago. So we've come a long way, and hopefully we can do a lot more.
And you are living proof, Clint, that this works. So, that to me, and you're obviously not just N equals 1, you're N equals 550, as you were saying, and that's a big cross-section of the community. So if people are interested in learning more about what you do, can you give them where they can go for, Facebook or Instagram or your website? Can you help them get there? Because, anyone who has rheumatoid arthritis, and I'm seeing it more and more, they need these options. They need to understand what's available to them. That medicine is not the be-all and end-all, although, it helps you to a point. But most of us go to medicine first, and then when it doesn't work, we go, well, where do I go now? What do I do now? Am I going to be crippled for the rest of my life? So could you tell us where we can find you and where people can get, to understand what you're doing?
Yeah, the easiest way is just go to our website, which is paddisonprogram.com. And Paddison's spelt after my last name, which is P-A-D-D, as in dog, I-S-O-N. Very easy to find on YouTube. Just type in Paddison Rheumatoid or Clint Rheumatoid, and we come up pretty quick. So our podcasts are on, the usual iTunes or stuff, or people actually like watching them on YouTube just as much as anything else. I post all my podcasts on YouTube. And on Facebook, again, easy to find, just / Rheumatoid Arthritis Program. So on our website, sign up to the mailing list, and you just get notifications every time we have created a new piece of content. We also have an app for Android and iPhones. It's just Paddison Program. Again, you can get notifications on your phone and listen to the podcast straight right there in the app.
And I've personally downloaded your free content and also your paid program. But what I love about everything that you're offering, Clint, is that it's so affordable. I think I paid $90 for a whole protocol, recipes, ebooks, a whole stack of downloads. I'm just bringing it up now. There's like 6 or 7 pieces to your. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces to your download.
And if you click on those headings, you'll see subheadings underneath those, and there's 13 days of videos to guide you through each and every day. And within those videos, there's information to guide you through day 1, day 2, day 3, and so forth through to day 13, and then all about the reintroduction. There's overview videos about the entire process. And you'll also find in there, if you go towards the bottom, if I think I know where you're looking, there's a troubleshooting section.
Yes.
And that's where we have like a 50-minute video on reversing rheumatoid in the knees. We have how to support your loved one if you've got rheumatoid arthritis, if they've got rheumatoid arthritis, so that's for your family to watch. And we go into detail about the acid-alkaline balance. We talk about a whole bunch of stuff in there. So, yes, I haven't raised the price on that since we put that together nearly 6 years ago, and that's the feedback that we get, is it's affordable. And so what I do is put out as much free stuff as possible, and then occasionally someone wants to actually have it all put together in a nice, easy-to-follow package, and those occasional purchases then enable me to spend my time continuing to create free stuff and to have wonderful chats with wonderful people like yourself.
Yeah, I also downloaded your stuff, Clint. It's really well put together. So congratulations, and we need more and more people like you out there spreading the word about how to get well. And you know, it's so important. Yet we just seem to go straight to not even thinking about our food and our lifestyle. So well done, congratulations.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being able to share this with you guys. Thanks for having this platform, for enabling people like myself and you guys to talk about such important things.
As we say, creating a ripple effect that changes the world.
It's lovely.
We love it. Thank you for being a part of today's show. You've been amazing.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
So for all of our listeners, head on over to Clint's website. The website details are going to be in the show notes. If you're out jogging or you're vacuuming or you're in your car right now, when you come back home, log on to the show notes and you'll find us at allthews.facebook.com/up-for-a-chat. I did it again, Cindy. I get it wrong almost every time. What are we now? This is our 6th year?
317th show.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Ay, ay, ay.
Ay, ay, ay.
Ay, ay, ay. Or you can find us at allthews.thewellnesscouch.com/up-for-a-chat. Thank you to our guest today. Make sure that you tune in next week on Up for a Chat. Make sure that you give us a 5-star rating when you're listening to us, and tell everybody that you know about Up for a Chat. Let's spread the word. As we go into 2019, let's quick our listeners up to 3.5 million. What do you reckon? We can do it. We can do it. We're already at 2.5. We can get to 3.5. Let's do this thing, my friends. Join us here and Up for a Chat next week and become part of the ripple effect that's changing the world. And we are going to see you on the ride. Bye for now, everybody.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.